Bernie Sanders is back with a policy that, on the day that we find out the U.S. is seriously considering building a new network of military bases throughout Iraq that they're calling lily pads, isn't that sweet? The policy just seems so goddamned obvious, so common sense, that there is no possible way that it'll become law in America, ever. But let's talk about the actual policy. Sanders is offering an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act that would require that lawmakers offset spending in the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund by raising new revenues. Now, there's a lot of terms in there. Let me explain it. It basically means that when we spend money on war, we should pay for it. You madman, Bernie Sanders. How could you possibly think that we would spend and then actually pay for it? No, and I sent out a tweet earlier today. I said, I was very level-headed. I said, how is this not the fucking law already? But it's not. It's not the fucking law at all. Congress isn't currently required to pay for any spending through the OCO, even if it rises into the dozens or hundreds of billions of dollars. The war fund also isn't subjected to the congressionally mandated budget caps under the sequester. The sequester, which was the congressional equivalent of, we've got a really serious budgetary problem here. We're going to do anything to close these gaps, except for cut into the overseas discretionary spending. We can't possibly cap that. So they can put however much money in there, and they don't have to actually pay for it. And by the way, Bernie Sanders, as great of an idea as this isn't like whenever we spend money on war, we have to pay for it. This is one particular fund. When we spend that money, can we possibly offset that with some kind of revenue? And he's given examples like the war tax that would have had a new tax on millionaires to pay for this. They, of course, said no to that. He's been trying for years to get that passed. And so even when it's in one little tiny fund, no, we will not have any budgetary responsibility, all that budgetary conservative bullshit, the philosophy. No, we're not actually going to do that. Just spend, spend, spend. Let's not actually think about it. And look, it's not like philosophically there's no reason why you would be able to do some military spending without immediately covering it with new revenue. If the Nazis are coming, yeah, you want to be able to defend your shores from them, but that's not what's happening. We're like dartboarding countries and then bombing them. And they say that it's emergency funding. Every time it's emergency funding. But if I was blowing through my emergency house burning fund every month for a decade, I should probably move neighborhoods because that neighborhood is on fucking fire. But for some reason, when it comes to military spending, we can't have the sort of responsibility that you would expect of a single person doing that sort of spending. No, this is exactly why we need someone like Bernie Sanders running for the presidency. This is why we need someone like Bernie Sanders to win the presidency. Not for arcane, awesome new policies, not to pluck a great policy from Scandinavia and import it here, not to come up with something revolutionary and novel. No. We need him to say the obvious things that we clearly need to have in our government that any rational, common sense person would assume is already the law. That is what we need Bernie Sanders for. Thank God, if there is one, for Bernie Sanders. And that's my final judgment.